Alright, let's explore the deep. The cave angler. Picture the ocean floor somewhere beneath the Pacific, 1,000 meters down, where sunlight has never reached and the pressure would flatten a car like paper. In the darkness, a single light pulses. It is not a lamp, not a beacon, not a machine. It is a lure, grown from living tissue, dangling from the forehead of something that has been perfecting this trick for 130 million years. The anglerfish was hunting before the dinosaurs fell. It is still hunting now. Before the Schmidt Ocean Institute captured the first footage of a live deep-sea anglerfish pair in 2021, every specimen science had ever studied arrived dead, hauled to the surface by nets, and destroyed by decompression. What we knew of this creature came from collapsed onwards on unrecognizable bodies. We were classifying nightmares from their wreckage. The deep ocean below 1,000 meters remains less explored than the surface of Mars, with less than 20% mapped in any meaningful detail. The largest confirmed anglerfish measures 1.2 meters. But reports from submersible crews and deep-water fishermen describe encounters with lure-bearing creatures approaching 4 to 5 meters, moving through water that our equipment can barely reach. The bioluminescent lure operates through a bacterial symbiosis that science cannot yet replicate artificially. The anglerfish did not develop this system recently. Fossil records confirm the structure has remained essentially unchanged since the Cretaceous period. 130 million years of refinement, and we have only just seen one alive. The folklore is harder to dismiss than it should be. Japanese Ningyo legends, Norwegian coastal mythology, and Pacific island traditions independently describe fish-like predators with glowing appendages that lure sailors toward the water. These cultures had no contact with one another and no knowledge of deep-sea biology. They were describing something they encountered near the surface. Which raises the obvious question about what those surface encounters actually were. The confirmed anglerfish is already one of the strangest organisms on this planet. Its sexual dimorphism is so extreme, the male fuses permanently into the female's bloodstream, dissolving into her body entirely. That is the version we know about, the one small enough to reach the surface. The deep relatives, the ones that have had 130 million years of isolation and pressure to grow into something else, remain unclassified. The light still pulses down there. It is still waiting for something to come closer. The void swimmer. On the 23rd of October 1968, the USS Stein returned to port in San Diego with its sonar dome shredded. The rubber casing was torn open in multiple locations. When investigators examined the damage, they found biological material embedded in the tears. Large, hook-lined sucker rings from a cephalopod. The sucker rings were sent to marine biologists. The conclusion was documented and then quietly filed away. The species responsible has never been classified. Cephalopods are among the oldest successful predators in evolutionary history, with fossil records extending back 500 million years. The vampire squid, Vampiro teutis infernalis, lives in oxygen minimum zones at 600 to 900 meters, in conditions considered nearly uninhabitable, and has remained morphologically unchanged for 300 million years. The colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, reaches 14 meters confirmed. But sperm whale skin tells a different story. The circular scars left by squid sucker rings on recovered sperm whales measure up to 30 centimeters in diameter, indicating encounters with animals potentially 4 to 5 times the size of anything we have ever photographed. In 1997, NOAA hydrophone arrays recorded a sound that crossed 5,000 kilometers of ocean and registered louder than a blue whale. The frequency sweep was initially attributed to a biological source. The bloop, as it was cataloged, was reclassified as icequake activity in 2012. Several of the acoustic engineers who processed the original signal disputed that reclassification, noting that the frequency pattern is inconsistent with ice fracture and consistent with rapid muscular contraction in a very large biological organism. The dispute has never been formally resolved. What makes the void swimmer so difficult to dismiss is the USS Stein incident. Sonar domes are not fragile. The rubber casing is designed to withstand deep water pressure and contact with debris. The hooks recovered were confirmed biological, confirmed cephalopod, and confirmed to belong to no classified species. The report exists, the material was documented, and then the inquiry was closed. Polynesian, Maori, and Norse traditions all describe vast swimming creatures capable of engulfing ships. The anatomical consistency across cultures that had no contact with one another is striking. The kraken was assumed mythology for centuries. Then, in 2004, the first live giant squid was photographed. It had also been assumed in mythology we named the deep the void because we could not see into it. Something down there has had 500 million years to make sure that remains true, the rift crab. In 1977, marine geologist Robert Ballard was mapping sediment along the Galapagos Rift when his submersible's camera swept across something that overturned a foundational assumption of biology. Dense colonies of life, thriving at 2,500 meters, in total darkness, at temperatures near freezing, sustained entirely by hydrogen sulfide from hydrothermal vents. Not a trace of sunlight, not a trace of photosynthesis. The ocean floor was not a desert, it was a world. Before that discovery, the assumption was universal. All complex life requires sunlight. The food chain began with the sun and ended with the apex predator. Hydrothermal vent ecosystems collapsed that model entirely. Chemosynthetic life, life built on chemical energy rather than solar energy, was not theoretical. It was thriving in environments considered universally lethal. That shift in understanding was significant enough. What came after it was more unsettling. In 2005, researchers discovered the yeti crab Kiwa hirsuta at a hydrothermal vent in the South Pacific. The yeti crab farms bacteria on its own claws, a behavior with no parallel in crustacean biology, implying a level of metabolic sophistication previously attributed only to mammals. Deep-sea gigantism, the confirmed biological principle whereby species grow significantly larger in cold, high-pressure, low-metabolism environments, applies directly to crustacean body plans. And that body plan is 500 million years old, confirmed, unchanged across 5 mass extinction events. In 2023, a survey of the Atacama Trench at 8,000 meters found crab-like organisms of unclassified species moving in coordinated group patterns inconsistent with scavenging behavior. Scavengers do not coordinate, hunters do. The Megarachne cervinae, initially misidentified as a giant prehistoric sea scorpion, demonstrated how close ancient arthropod design comes to the configuration still being discovered in the deep. The Tully monster, a Carboniferous-era organism with eyes on stalks and a claw-tipped proboscis, has partial anatomical analogs in organisms still being found today. A body plan 500 million years old, a confirmed principle of deep ocean gigantism, a coordinated group behavior at 8,000 meters that biology has no current explanation for. The rift crab is not a monster from mythology, it is a logical extrapolation from confirmed science. What 500 million years of isolation, pressure, and chemical energy produces in an environment we have surveyed less than 1% of is not something we have a classification for. Yet, the Trench Leviathan. On the 23rd of January 1960, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh descended 10,916 meters into the Challenger Deep aboard the bathyscaphe Trieste. It was the deepest point ever reached by a human being. The pressure outside the porthole was 1,086 bar, more than 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. They looked out. They saw a flatfish, a sole or flounder-type organism living at the absolute bottom of the ocean in conditions that should have made vertebrate life impossible. The scientific community largely disbelieved them. The confirmed depth record of 10,916 meters sits against the Mariana Trench's total depth of approximately 11,034 meters. That gap, just over 100 meters of unexplored water beneath the deepest human descent, is the least examined space on the surface of this planet. The Mariana snailfish, Pseudoleparus swirei, was confirmed at 8,178 meters in 2017. It is currently the deepest fish on record. The Challenger. Deep extends nearly 3,000 meters further below it. In 2012, James Cameron's solo dive to Challenger Deep recorded shrimp-like amphipods in concentrations that marine biologists described as consistent with a functioning food chain at maximum depth. A food chain requires something to eat the amphipods. That animal has not been identified. The Book of Job's Leviathan, a text estimated by scholars to predate the final Hebrew canon by 1,000 years, describes a deep ocean creature with armored scales, breath like fire, and eyes that emit light. The description was written by Bronze Age coastal people who built their livelihoods on the sea. It predates marine biology by 3 millennia. The anatomical specifics, bioluminescent eyes, armored body, a creature that makes the water boil from below, map uncomfortably well onto what a very large, bioluminescent, deep-water predator would look like from the surface. The detail that the scientific community has never fully resolved is Picard's flatfish. He was a trained marine scientist. Walsh was a naval officer with decades of operational experience. Their account was corroborated by the Trieste's onboard camera, which captured indistinct footage of the organism before it moved. The flatfish of the Challenger Deep has never been officially reclassified as mistaken observation. It has simply been set aside. We have reached the bottom of the ocean once. We found life. We confirmed a food chain operating in total darkness at pressures that crush steel. What sits at the top of that food chain remains unidentified. We have not been back with equipment capable of answering the question. The trench leviathan is not a creature we invented, it is a vacancy in the data, and vacancies at maximum depth have a way of filling themselves. The serpent beast. In April 1977, a Japanese fishing trawler named the Zuyomaru hauled a decomposing carcass from 300 meters off the coast of New Zealand. The crew photographed it before disposal. The creature weighed 1,800 kilograms, had a long neck, 4 paddle-like fins, and a small head on an elongated serpentine body. The ship's scientist on board, Michihiko Yano, took tissue samples and measured the fins. The crew returned it to the sea because of the smell. The photographs went around the world. Japanese scientists initially suggested the carcass might be a plesiosaur. Subsequent protein analysis of the tissue samples indicated basking shark. But the methodology of that analysis was disputed almost immediately, with several marine biologists noting that the anatomical proportions photographed were inconsistent with any known shark decomposition profile. Basking sharks, when they decompose, lose their gill arches and dorsal fin first, creating a specific silhouette. The Zuyomaru carcass did not match that silhouette, it matched something else. Plesiosaurs dominated the Mesozoic seas for 135 million years. Their body plan, long neck, 4 flippers, small head, tapered body, is essentially identical to the description of every major sea serpent account in recorded history, from Norse tradition to Scottish folklore to Maori Taniwha legends, across cultures that had no contact with one another and no knowledge of Mesozoic paleontology. The coelacanth was declared extinct for 66 million years before a live specimen was caught off South Africa in 1938. The lesson of the coelacanth is that large, ancient marine creatures can survive undetected in cold, deep water for geological epochs without leaving a trace in the fossil record. In 2023, researchers from Otago University in New Zealand published fossil evidence in Cretaceous research, suggesting that plesiosaurs could tolerate freshwater environments, directly challenging the long-standing assumption that they could not have survived in post-extinction ecological niches. That study made the conventional dismissal significantly harder to maintain. The Zuyomaru tissue samples were reportedly never made available for independent laboratory analysis. What remains is the photograph, the measurements taken by a trained scientist, and a decomposition profile that marine biologists on both sides of the debate have never fully reconciled. The 1905 report by 2 fellows of the Zoological Society of London, documenting a 20-meter creature with 2 pairs of fin-like limbs observed from the yacht Valhalla in the South Atlantic, was logged in the Proceedings of the Zoological Society and never explained. If the coelacanth survived 66 million years of assumed extinction and was caught on a routine fishing line, what exactly is the Zuyomaru photograph evidence of? The eye collector. In 1964, a U.S. Navy submarine tracking exercise in the Pacific produced an acoustic signature that could not be attributed to any known submarine, cetacean, or geological event. The file was classified. When a portion of it was partially released decades later, the analyst whose note at the bottom read simply, "Biological, unclassified." The sound had the structural characteristics of rapid muscular contraction in a very large organism. No follow-up investigation was made available to the public. The file remains partially sealed. The giant squid, Architeuthis dux, possesses the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, up to 30 centimeters in diameter. Those eyes did not evolve to admire the darkness, they evolved specifically to detect the bioluminescent flashes of sperm whales at depth, giving the squid a detection range in total darkness exceeding 120 meters. Eyes that large, built to that specification, are an evolutionary response to a predator sophisticated enough to require that level of advance warning. The arms race that produced 30-centimeter eyes was not a minor biological skirmish. Sperm whale skin carries the record of that arms race. Circular scars from squid sucker rings on recovered sperm whales measure up to 30 centimeters in diameter, corresponding to animals potentially 4 to 5 times the size of the confirmed maximum giant squid. In 2020, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute filmed a Magnapina squid at 2,400 meters with tentacles extending over 6 meters from a body less than 30 centimeters long. Marine biologists reviewing the footage noted the posture, arms hanging straight down, motionless, in a configuration they described as consistent with ambush behavior. An ambush posture implies a prey item large enough to warrant the ambush. Ancient Greek accounts of the Scylla describe a 6-headed sea creature with eyes on stalks that snatched sailors from passing ships. The anatomy, multiple arm clusters, eyes positioned for wide field detection, a body capable of reaching above the waterline, maps precisely onto a large cephalopod at the surface. These were seafaring people recording what they encountered. The description survived because it was useful. Warnings that describe nothing real do not survive for 3,000 years. The squid's sucker rings on the USS Stein sonar dome were confirmed biological, confirmed cephalopod, and confirmed to belong to no classified species. The Magnapina waits in the ambush position at 2,400 meters. The sperm whale's skin is a ledger of encounters with something larger than anything we have classified. When a creature evolves eyes the size of dinner plates specifically to see what is hunting it in total darkness, the more important question is not about the squid. It is about what the squid is afraid of. The deep reaver. In 1918, commercial lobster fishermen working the waters off Port Stephens, Australia, refused to return to their traps after reporting that something had cleared the area overnight, not damaged the traps, cleared them. Each trap measured 91 centimeters across. Whatever had removed them had passed them through the trap openings. Marine biologist David Stead, who interviewed the fishermen directly and published their accounts in his 1963 book, Sharks and Rays of Australian Seas, noted that these were experienced, unsentimental commercial operators who handled sharks regularly. Several refused to return to work for days. Stead described their demeanor as genuinely shaken. The fisherman's description of the creature was specific: dirty white coloring, a head as big as a room, and what Stead recorded as tremendous size, combined with horrible death, like slowness. That combination of scale and deliberate movement is not consistent with any confirmed large shark species. It is, however, consistent with something operating under the biological principle of deep-sea gigantism, a confirmed scientific phenomenon whereby species in cold, high-pressure, low metabolism, deep ocean environments grow significantly larger than their shallow water relatives. The giant isopod, Bathynomus giganteus, confirmed at up to 50 centimeters, is a direct descendant of organisms unchanged since the Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. It is, in basic structural terms, a woodlouse scaled and adapted to the deep. In 2010, a research team in the Gulf of Mexico discovered a previously unknown isopod species at 750 meters, feeding on a whale carcass for over 2 years without competition from any other predator. Deep-sea gigantism applied to a 300 million year old arthropod body plan. In an environment where we have surveyed less than 1% of the available space, produces a creature whose confirmed upper size limit we have not yet reached. The fossil record offers a reference point. Jacalopterus renanii, a sea scorpion from 390 million years ago, measured 2.5 meters, making it the largest arthropod ever confirmed. It dominated marine ecosystems during its era. The body plan it represents has never become extinct. In 2016, footage from a survey of the Banda Sea at 4,000 meters showed an unclassified arthropod approximately 90 centimeters in length, displaying behavior that marine biologists reviewing the footage described as predatory rather than scavenging. That footage has not been formally published. A 300 million year old body plan, a confirmed biological principle of deep ocean size amplification. A documented 1918 eyewitness account from men who spent their lives on the water. The deep reaver does not require mythology to be disturbing. It requires only the acknowledgement that we have surveyed almost none of the environment it would inhabit, and that the body plan it would carry has already survived every extinction event this planet has produced, the abyss dragon. On an unrecorded date in 1734, Norwegian missionary Hans Egede was sailing off the coast of Greenland when the crew of his vessel observed something rising from the water. Egede, a Lutheran administrator known for precise and unsentimental record-keeping, published the account in his 1745 text, A Description of Greenland. The creature, he wrote, raised itself so high out of the water that its head reached level with the ship's crow's nest. It then plunged beneath the vessel and resurfaced on the opposite side. The account was corroborated by crew logs filed separately. Egede had no reason to fabricate it, and no framework within which a fabrication would have served him. The oarfish, Regalicus glesson, is the longest bony fish confirmed to exist, reaching up to 11 meters. When two giant oarfish washed ashore in California in 2010 and 2013, witnesses who filmed them described the animals as deeply unsettling to observe, primarily because of the way they moved. Marine biologists have proposed the oarfish as the rational explanation for historical sea serpent accounts. The oarfish explains elongated shape and surface appearance. It does not explain the paddle-like fins, the long neck separated from the body, or the head positioned at crow's nest height above the waterline. Egede's account describes anatomy inconsistent with any fish. The Pacific sleeper shark, Somniosus pacificus, reaches 7 meters, has been confirmed in Arctic waters at depths exceeding 2,000 meters, and carries a confirmed lifespan potentially exceeding 500 years. One of the least observed large predators on Earth. The Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus, was entirely unknown to Western science until the 20th century, swimming undetected for centuries in the same waters European ships had crossed for generations. In 2023, a sperm whale was found beached in Scotland, carrying bite marks of a radius and force inconsistent with any confirmed predatory species in North Atlantic waters. The marks have not been attributed. Chinese imperial records from the Han Dynasty include multiple century-separated administrative accounts of sea dragons washing ashore in eastern coastal provinces, each describing consistent anatomy: elongated body, paddle limbs, elongated neck. These were government records, not folk stories. They were filed by officials whose role required accuracy. Egede's 1734 account notes a long, sharp snout and broad flippers. He had no knowledge of plesiosaur anatomy. The term did not yet exist. He was simply documenting what the crew had observed. The question is not whether Egede was lying. He almost certainly was not. The question is what a long-necked, paddle-finned creature raising its head to crow's nest height off the coast of Greenland in 1734 actually was, and whether the unidentified bite marks on the 2023 Scottish whale represent the same animal 3 centuries later, still unclassified: the shadow current. On the 1st of March 1997, NOAA hydrophone arrays designed to monitor Cold War-era submarine movements recorded a sound that crossed 5,000 kilometers of ocean. It was louder than a blue whale, which at 180 decibels holds the confirmed record as the loudest animal on Earth. The recorded signal was estimated at 189 decibels. NOAA cataloged it as the bloop. The agency's initial assessment described it as consistent with a biological source of unknown origin. In 2012, it was officially reclassified as icequake activity. Several of the acoustic engineers who processed the original signal disputed that reclassification publicly, arguing that the frequency sweep pattern was inconsistent with ice fracture and consistent with rapid muscular contraction in an organism of very large size. The dispute has never been formally resolved. The SOFAR channel, the sound fixing and ranging channel, is an acoustic layer in the ocean at approximately 900 meters, where temperature and pressure conditions allow sound to travel across entire ocean basins with minimal loss. It is, in practical terms, the ocean's own long-range communication network. The bloop was detected across 5,000 kilometers of NOAA's hydrophone coverage network, meaning whatever produced it was either using the SOFAR channel deliberately or was large enough to saturate it. Both possibilities are disturbing in different ways. Cold War-era SOSUS tapes, partially declassified after 1991, contain multiple acoustic events designated biological, unclassified, recorded across the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. The organisms responsible were never identified. Polynesian and Micronesian oral traditions describe a deep current voice, a low sound felt before dangerous swells arrived, interpreted as a living presence moving through the ocean floor. The consistency of that tradition across island cultures, separated by thousands of kilometers of open water, suggests the sound was real enough to become doctrine. In 2021, researchers from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution identified previously unknown deep-water thermal plume systems in the Pacific, each capable of sustaining isolated biological ecosystems entirely cut off from surface observation. Life, evolving in sealed environments with no contact with the surface world. The ocean does not simply hide creatures. It hides entire worlds in which those creatures have been developing, isolated, and unobserved. For timescales that make human history look like an afternoon, the bloop was recorded once. detected across 5,000 kilometers of ocean, estimated louder than the largest confirmed animal on Earth, disputed, reclassified, and filed. It has never been recorded again. Whether that silence means the source has gone deeper or that it simply has no need to call a second time is a question the data does not answer. The ocean has its own voice. In 1997, something used it. We have not heard it since. The Megalodon Shadow. In 1875, the HMS Challenger was conducting the world's first systematic deep ocean survey when its dredging equipment pulled two large fossilized teeth from the floor of the Pacific Ocean. The teeth were identified immediately as belonging to Otodus megalodon, the largest confirmed marine predator in Earth's history. Megalodon reached an estimated 15 to 18 meters in length and weighed up to 100 tons, with a bite force estimated between 108,000 and 182,000 newtons, the most powerful bite of any known animal. The last confirmed megalodon tooth in the fossil record dates to approximately 3.6 million years ago. But the manganese crust surrounding the Challenger teeth, the ocean floor deposit that accumulates at a measurable rate over time, was analyzed in 1921 by researchers Depere and Roman. Their published figure placed the teeth at 10,000 to 15,000 years old. Not 3.6 million years, 10,000. The methodology has been disputed. It has not been refuted. Sharks do not have bones. Their skeletons are cartilage, which does not fossilize. The only physical record Megalodon leaves behind is teeth and occasional vertebral calcifications. A living Megalodon in deep water would leave almost no biological trace that could reach the surface. The absence of recent fossil evidence is not evidence of absence for an animal whose body is designed to decompose without record. Since 2012, OceArch has been tracking great white shark migration patterns via satellite tag, producing the most comprehensive dataset on apex marine predator behavior ever assembled. The data contains a persistent anomaly. During migration, great white sharks, the confirmed apex predators of the open ocean, make repeated deep dives to between 300 and 900 meters. The behavior is not fully explained by feeding patterns or thermoregulation. Several marine biologists reviewing the OceArch dataset have described the dive profile as consistent with avoidance behavior. Animals that fear nothing do not dive repeatedly to 900 meters in the middle of a migration route. Avoidance behavior implies something to avoid. In 2016, a research team from the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology tagged a tiger shark in deep water off Oahu. Within 24 hours, the tag returned to the surface without the shark. The sensor recorded a rapid temperature increase to 26 degrees Celsius and a dive profile consistent, in the words of the researchers, with ingestion by a larger animal. The team noted the finding. It was reported by OceArch. No further investigation was announced. 3.6 million years is how long we tell ourselves Megalodon has been gone. But the Challenger pulled its teeth from the Pacific floor with 10,000 years of ocean crust on them. Great whites dive to 900 meters and return with altered behavior. In 2016, a tagged shark vanished into something warm and large and deep. Megalodon's body plan was the most effective marine predator design this planet has ever produced. Evolution does not retire its best work without reason, and no reason has been confirmed. 10 creatures, 10 categories of evidence, and underneath each one the same foundational problem. We have surveyed less than 20% of the deep ocean. We have classified a fraction of what lives there. Every confident statement about what does and does not exist in the deep is a statement made from the surface by species that has spent most of its history afraid of the water. The ancients who wrote about sea serpents and luminous monsters and the voice of the deep were not ignorant. They were coastal people, seafarers and fishermen recording encounters in the only language they had. What they saw was real enough to become warning, real enough to survive. The ocean kept their secrets then. It is keeping them still. Every time a tagged shark vanishes, every time a sonar dome comes back shredded, every time a decomposing carcass matches nothing in the classification system, the ocean is offering the same answer to the same question. We are simply not ready to accept it. If any of these entries changed how you look at the water, leave a comment on the one that stayed with you. Build the case. The rest of us are reading. This is not mythology dressed up as science. It is science that has not yet caught up with what is down there. Subscribe, because this is only the surface.